In the quiet town of Millville lived a little boy named David. Innocent and wide-eyed, he bore the weight of an immense fear, a fear of the dark and all the unknown creatures it concealed. David was just like any other child, except for one thing, his overactive imagination that transformed the benign darkness into a playground of terror. Every creak of the house, every rustle of the leaves outside, every shadow that danced on his bedroom wall took on an ominous form in his mind. His days were filled with dread for the impending night. As the sun set, his pulse quickened and his palms became clammy. The world around him, once familiar and safe, morphed into a labyrinth of hidden threats. The comforting corners of his room turned into potential hideouts for the monsters he envisioned. His nights were worse. Sleep was elusive, for every time he closed his eyes, he was tormented by vivid nightmares. In these dreams, he was pursued by grotesque alien creatures, their eyes glowing in the pitch-black darkness, their mouths filled with razor-sharp teeth. The walls of his room seemed to close in on him, as if preparing to swallow him whole. Among the horrors David imagined, one stood out, the dreaded El Chupacabra. He was convinced this beast from lore lurked in the shadows of his room, waiting for the perfect moment to pounce. The very thought of the creature, with its spine-chilling howl and blood-curdling eyes, sent shivers down David's spine. David's world was a ceaseless cycle of fear and terror. His fear of the dark was not just a phase, but a relentless nightmare that gripped him in its icy hold. The dark was his enemy, a cloak under which lurked his worst fears. As night fell, David's heart pounded in his chest like a wild drum, for he knew what awaited him in the darkness. The shadows were closing in, and the unseen fears of his childhood were about to take a terrifyingly tangible form. One fateful night, the line between David's nightmares and reality blurred, as strange sounds echoed from the dark corners of his room. The hushed whispers of the wind outside his window seemed to take on a sinister tone. The usual tranquility of the night was replaced with an eerie ambience that sent chills down his spine. In the stillness of the night, each creak of the old wooden floorboards, each rustle of the wind-blown leaves outside, seemed amplified, taking on the sinister form of alien creatures and the El Chupacabra in David's vivid imagination. The room, a sanctuary by day, turned into a realm of shadows and fears by night. Each shadow seemed to morph into grotesque figures, each more terrifying than the last. As the sounds grew louder, David's heart pounded in his chest like a wild drum. His breath hitched, his eyes widened in terror, yet he could not look away from the darkness that enveloped his room. Each movement in the dark was a potential threat, a monster from another world, an alien creature, or the dreaded El Chupacabra. The tension in the room was palpable. It was as if time itself held its breath, waiting for the climax. The wind howled outside, and the shadows danced on the walls in a macabre ballet. It was a roller coaster of suspense and fear, with David at the center, a small boy trapped in his own nightmares. And then, just as the tension seemed unbearable, a terrifying roar filled the room. It was a sound that could freeze the blood in one's veins, a sound that could curdle the sweetest dreams into nightmares. It was the sound of David's worst fears come to life. Suddenly, everything went black. The roar, the sounds, the shadows, everything disappeared into an abyss of darkness. Silence descended, a silence so profound it was deafening. What happened to David? That, dear listeners, is a question that haunts the quiet town of Millville to this very day.